Alarming new information tonight about terrorist threats to the United States, while a brutal terror plot is foiled by a crucial American ally. This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. New illustrations tonight of just how dangerous the terror threat is becoming, both to America and her allies. While we have new insights into the plans of terror leaders for this country, we're also learning more about the disruption of a major attack planned for Australia. Meanwhile, today, the Director of National Intelligence and the head of the CIA tried to express just how serious the situation now is.
This is just one more demonstration that this is an international challenge. This is something that is going to be with us for a generation.
This environment is composed of the most diverse array of threats and challenges that I've seen in my 50-plus years in the intel business.
We have Fox team coverage this evening from the White House. More details and complaints about President Obama's strategy of going on the offense against ISIS. We also have chilling new information on another terror threat from the Middle East. But we begin with Sky News reporter Laura Jays and the harrowing story of the Australian plot.
In the dead of night, police honed in on their targets. 800 investigators, forensic experts and tactical officers spanned out across Sydney, simultaneously hitting suburb after suburb. Homes and cars were searched. Some suspects were handcuffed and questioned at length. 15 people were arrested.
Police believe that this group that we have executed this operation on today had the intention and had started to carry out planning to commit violent acts.
This terror cell allegedly prepared to target Australians randomly and carry out public executions.
The violence was to be perpetrated on a member of the public on the streets.
Planning to drape their victims in the ISIS flag, behead them, all the while recording it for use as propaganda to be broadcast the world over. These instructions coming from within senior ranks of Islamic State.
Quite direct exhortations were coming from an Australian who is apparently quite senior in ISIL, to networks of support back in Australia to conduct demonstration killings here in this country.
The Prime Minister says the biggest terror raids in Australia's history was the result of months of investigation and planning.
This is not just suspicion, this is intent.
12 suburbs across Western Sydney were targeted, but it was in Guildford that an alleged extremist leader was caught. On his knees, handcuffed and surrounded by officers, Omar Azari was taken in and charged.
This person was engaged in preparing to commit a terrorist act here.
Prosecutors allege 22-year-old Azari was planning to shock, horrify and terrify the community, which involved an unusual level of fanaticism.
It was extreme violence.
A phone conversation between Azari and a senior Australian-based ISIS recruiter is a key part of the evidence. Authorities are urging calm, but they know that many will be quite alarmed at the prospect of random acts of violence becoming a new form of terrorism. Laura Jays, Sky News.
Laura Jays in Sydney. And there is still another terror group besides ISIS that may pose a major threat to the U.S. homeland. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has the inside information on that.
British diplomatic officials asked reporters not to identify the British hostage in the new ISIS video. He appears stressed and reads from a script where he denounces the U.S. strategy as unwinnable. And there is a second terror group gaining a foothold in Syria. U.S. government officials now acknowledge that fighters with Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda network, many battle-hardened from Afghanistan, Pakistan and Yemen, are in Syria to partner with the al-Nusra Front, the al-Qaeda affiliate. Given the sensitivity of the information, the nation's top intelligence officer seemed to hesitate when asked if the group poses a risk equal to ISIS.
In terms of threat to the homeland, perhaps they do. This Khorasan group, so-called, which I guess is out there, is potentially yet another threat to the homeland.
U.S. officials believe Khorasan includes operatives trained by the Yemeni bomb maker Ibrahim al-Asiri, who was behind the underwear bomb plot in 2009 and the printer cartridge bombs a year later. Information about fresh plotting and the possible recruitment of Western passport holders to carry bombs led the TSA to change its security posture in July and call for increased scrutiny of cell phones and laptops on flights into the U.S. And the rivalry between the two terror networks to be the leader of the global jihad was addressed on Capitol Hill.
These groups are in competition with one another for attention, for fundraising, for recruitment, and one way to compete is to show that you're the biggest and baddest group out there.
And there is renewed scrutiny of the southern border and whether ISIS sympathizers might cross from Mexico into the U.S. after the conservative group Judicial Watch reported a credible threat leading up to the anniversary of 9/11. One Republican is going further.
I have a reason to believe that on September 10th there were actually 4 individuals trying to cross through the Texas border who were apprehended at 2 different stations that do have ties to known terrorist organizations in the Middle East. Are you not aware of that?
I've heard reports to that effect. I don't know the accuracy of the reports or how much credence to give them.
Today, after new questions from Fox, there was some further clarification from Secretary Johnson, who said there's no specific credible intelligence that ISIS is trying to penetrate the southern border, but there was nothing more from Homeland Security on those reported arrests, Brett.
Whether there were 4, whether they were apprehended, nothing.
Right. There's something there because people are being a little squirrely about it from my experience, but they're not being specific, at least publicly.
Okay, Catherine, we'll follow it. Thank you. Preventing an ISIS terror attack here by eliminating the threat over there has become a consuming and controversial task for President Obama. Both he and his advisors continue to face skepticism about their strategy, their commitment, and their semantics. Here's Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry.
The White House edged closer today to airstrikes in Syria as Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel revealed he and General Martin Dempsey have approved specific war plans, which now await a green light from President Obama, who was briefed on the details yesterday at U.S. Central Command by General Lloyd Austin.
CENTCOM's plan includes targeted actions against ISIL safe havens in Syria, including its command and control, logistics capabilities, and infrastructure.
Yet today, the former commander of CENTCOM said it's time for the president to show the military is all in. Retired General Jim Mattis adding his voice to the drumbeat of current and former defense heavyweights, saying combat troops should not be off the table.
We have the most skillful, the fiercest, and certainly the most ethical ground forces in the world. And I don't think we should reassure the enemy in advance that they'll never face them.
Forcing top officials to scramble and insist they have not been off message.
The senior members of the President's National Security Team are on the same page as the Commander-in-Chief.
The President, Chairman Dempsey, General Austin, and I are in full alignment on all of our objectives and our tactics and our strategy.
While the president and his aides continue to stress U.S. troops will not be part of a combat mission, they're fuzzier about whether they'll be in a combat zone.
It will depend on exactly what the scenario is, exactly how far
how do you know
how
for
far
sure that they're not in
deployed.
combat if you have to figure out what the scenario is?
Again,
the question is more if you have the Iraqi soldiers there fighting ISIS, who the president has called these awful terrorists, and they're firing upon them, that sounds like a combat zone that U.S. troops are in.
Iraq is a very dangerous place, and American military personnel will have the equipment that they need to defend themselves.
As for Hagel, he faced heat from Democrats, worried the strategy to train and arm the Syrian rebels is too vague.
I find it pretty disturbing that we are having this hearing after we've taken a vote, because I don't think that the plan that I have seen was detailed enough to make me believe that your plan will work.
Now, General Dempsey made more news today, telling the Associated Press it may take up to a year to fully train the Syrian rebels. Significant because that's a key element of the president's strategy. The White House aides are signaling U.S. airstrikes will come well before then. Brett.
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. Make sure to stick around for a very special Throwback Thursday panel. We'll welcome my predecessor Britt Hume's regular group, Fred Barnes, Mara Eliason, and Mort Kondracki. If you have a question or comment on terror threats or the fight against ISIS for the panel, make sure to send me a tweet at Brett Baer. You could use the hashtag Special Report, and we'll read some of them on the air. Up next, will they stay or will they go? A report from Scotland on today's independence vote will take you to Edinburgh for the latest as the polls close there. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates across the country are covering tonight. WWCW in Lynchburg, Virginia, with more surveillance videos in the search for a missing University of Virginia student. Police say they've looked at images from 2 businesses showing 18-year-old Hannah Graham and others the night she disappeared. Yesterday, they released 2 other videos showing her walking past a pub and running past a service station. Fox 10 in Phoenix with the latest NFL player in trouble. Cardinals running back Jonathan Dwyer was arrested yesterday on domestic violence charges. He is accused of attacking his wife and 18-month-old son in 2 separate incidents in July. Dwyer has been deactivated from the team. And this is a live look at Bald Mountain in California from Fox 40 in Sacramento. The big story there tonight, as you can see, a wildfire raging out of control in the Sierra foothills. It's forced nearly 3,000 people from their homes. Police have arrested a 37-year-old man for starting that blaze. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.